shooting a film entirely in Japan and in Japanese with Japanese actors inevitably brought in the figure of Yasushi Ozu and the cinema of his that I love so much and that I know so much and that has formed me so much. How were we going to deal with the fact that he was there, his shadow was there, had to be there, couldn't avoid it? I mean, I don't shoot and I have my camera on the ground like Ozu, and I don't shoot with a 50mm. Always only one lens like Ozu. We changed lenses, Franz and I. We have lenses we like for outdoor shooting, and we like lenses for wide shots, and we like lenses for close-ups. Ozu shoot everything with one lens, and always from a low position. So I don't do any of this. But the presence of Ozu was there. It was a good presence in one hand, and on the other hand, it was a little bit scary. I didn't want to make a film like Ozu, or a film that would evoke his presence. But then again, his presence was there anyway. It forced us to be even more sure of what we were going to do. And it forced me to be conscious of him, but never in any way imitate anything. I felt it the most, of course, when family appeared, when the niece appeared and the sister appeared, because family is the Ozu territory. And as long as Hirayama was all by himself, I did look at him a little bit like Shishirio, but then he was his own person and he didn't need any example or father figure or whatever. But when family showed up, we were suddenly so much more in Ozu territory. And in the end, I felt it was good that Ozu's presence was there. And the way it shows up in our film maybe is just a heightened sense of awareness, because after all, Hirayama is very attentive to everything. And maybe that's all that's left of Ozu, this being attentive and being respectful of every person and of everything, every object. Sometimes in the Ozu film you see these shots without people, and then there's just objects or streets, and then you realize how much attention he put to everything. And then you realize the attention in his look is there in the entire film. And sometimes in perfect days, all there was of Ozu was this heightened attention. It was in Hirayama's way of looking. It was Hirayama treating his job, for instance, the toilets. There was this heightened attention at work. He looked at every object. A toilet is not necessarily a beautiful object or a water hose, but he looked at everything as if it only existed once and there, and he was so attentive to every detail. And that made it even possible to show so much of his routine, because who wants to see another person clean a toilet? Who really wants to see that? Unless he does it in a way that it has a certain attraction. And this attraction can only exist in his dedication to this profession or to the act that he's doing, the cleaning process. And the way that Hirayama is giving so much attention to everything does translate into the audience watching him. And I must say, I was so afraid that we had too much of his routine in the film, and sometimes in editing I thought he's already cleaned the toilet. Why can we really show a second toilet or a third? Can we really show again how he's doing it? We've seen it already. And then it is always made possible through the attention that Hirayama gives to everything. And then, of course, they're all different. Each of these buildings has its very own identity. Each of the buildings is done by a different architect, and they all have their specific presence. And that is also captivating, and that is part of the routine of Hirayama, that he's bringing out the difference in each of these places by the way he looks and the way his procedure works. He's not treating all these toilets as if they were toilets, but he's treating each of them specifically. And he sees them specifically. And when you go to these places, you realize their beauty is that they're all so different, and that each of them forces you to see the world differently. That is a beautiful thing. And it's a great luxury to have that in a city, a place that could look the same everywhere. Of course, most of us are used to toilets looking the same everywhere. But in these works of architecture and of art, each is specific, and that helped us a lot in the film and in Hirayama's routine, that each place was a new challenge, because each place wanted to be brought out, not only by us, the way we filmed it, but also by Hirayama, the way he cleaned them and the way he paid attention. So, in that way of paying attention, Ozu was ever present. That is the Ozu touch in our film. Because Hirayama was in the tradition of these characters. Not only did he carry the name of one of them, he was all of them. Through his attentiveness and through his gaze, and through the story that he showed us so well, that he once was a different man and became that man with a lot of attention to little things, to leaves and light and shadows and the beauty of these toilets. So in the film is a very Japanese entity. I didn't make a German film in Tokyo. At the same time, I could not possibly make a Japanese film. I'm not a Japanese director. But it's a very Japanese entity. Through the presence of Ozu in a strange way, but also through the way Koji Yakusho filled Hirayama with his self and with this attention. And for me, that is an utterly Japanese thing. Paying attention to small things and having the awareness how much small things matter in the big vision of the world. You cannot have a big vision of the world if you do not notice the small things. But if you notice the small things, you automatically are allowed to have a big vision. But not if you disregard the small things, then you cannot have a view of the big one, the big thing. The condition is that you respect the small things and little things, and the way the shadow falls and the way it touches. And that's why craft is something so beautiful in Japan, because it pays attention to little things. And because it pays attention to little things, you're able to see big things. And the little shadow on the wall is a reminder of who produces that little shadow, and that is the sun. and it is light. And maybe I did make a somehow Japanese film, even in my German mind, because I learned to pay attention to the little things. But maybe that's all. I don't know. I can never really change my own way of thinking. I cannot adopt Ozu's way of thinking, but I see it. I was so happy to this year see 4 Ozu films that I'd never seen before because they were restored or rediscovered or the negative brought back. And I realized that his way of thinking and his way of paying attention was in all these films I had not seen before, but differently. I mean, I saw, like one of the most amazing films I saw, I've never seen before, was Dragnet Girl. I don't know what the Japanese title is. It's a real film noir. It's like somebody imposed the rules of noir movies, which was a genre inside the American cinema, on the Japanese life. It's a certain aesthetic. And of course there's guns and there's police and there's crime and all of that is in the film. But then again, it's seen through Ozu's eyes, and it was fantastic to see a real film noir. But on the other hand, it was still an Ozu film. I had one big laugh in the film at the very end because towards the end, I realized my hero, Shisho, he must be in the film because I know he's in all of Ozu's films except one, and that one was the exception because he was sick. He couldn't shoot. So, but I know he had at least a little appearance in every other film from a certain moment on. So this film, Dragnet Girl, was from 1933. He had to be there. And I had really paid attention. He never showed up. There was no Ryoshisho, and we were just about at the end of the story. And then 2 policemen arrive. And although it wasn't a funny scene, and I had a big laugh. One of them was Ryoshisho. As a relatively young man, but there he was, and he even had a close-up. And and I whispered to my neighbor, who I didn't know, "That's him." And she looked at me as if I was somehow out of my mind. And then I realized she couldn't know what I was referring to. But there he was. Him. Hirayama, so to speak.